Live look right now, Palm Beach, Florida. President Trump landing moments ago ahead of a big meeting with Senate Republicans. Plus, where do Musk and Doge go next? The president unveiling the new targets. That's topping the hill on NewsNation tonight.
I will pick out a target and I say go in. We're a government. We have to be open.
First up, USAID. Coming up, the Pentagon and President Trump sticking up for Elon Musk. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. The president defending Doge today during a wide-ranging press conference as he met with the Japanese prime minister. The president also saying U.S. steel will not be sold. Instead, he says Japan will invest in the Pennsylvania company. A new announcement as well, as the president says new terms on tariffs could come as soon as Monday. As you see there, a live look in Palm Beach, Florida. The president getting off of Air Force One as he will spend the weekend there in South Florida before heading to the Super Bowl on Sunday. The first president in the history of the 59 years of the big game to head to watch the Super Bowl in person. And beyond the Beltway today as well, the head of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, at Guantanamo Bay tonight as more migrant flights arrive. But the theme tonight in this town involves a bit of angst on both sides of the aisle. Our Joe Khalil live in the Capitol as Republicans try to break their stalemate ahead of that big meeting with the president there in Florida over the weekend. Libby Dean on a Democratic lawmaker showdown at the Department of Education. But we begin tonight with our Robert Sherman live at the White House, where the president says more tariffs are on the way. Robert?
Blake, the president re-upping his stance that it doesn't matter who you are. If you want to trade with the U.S., it must be done equitably. That includes Japan, a major U.S. ally, with today marking the second time a head of state visited the White House this week. Japan pledging to invest in the U.S., but when asked if that means Japan would be spared from tariffs, the president said this.
We're going to be probably meeting on that Monday or Tuesday, have an announcement, probably a news conference, but probably reciprocal tariffs where a country pays so much or charges us so much, and we do the same.
North Korea denuclearization a top-of-mind concern for the two world leaders, with President Trump announcing the U.S. will have relations with the country and keep the dialogue open. And it wouldn't be a day at the White House with a few executive orders, 3 of them today, one of them relating to sanctions on South Africa, another one, Second Amendment rights, directing the Attorney General in order to look into any infringements on that liberty. And the last one, the establishment of a faith office meant to empower faith-based organizations and groups who do good in the community in order to continue their work on that front. Blake?
Robert Sherman, live tonight at the White House. Robert, thank you. Some of the government's reforms right now are out in the open. The signage for USAID stripped off the front of its building today. This happening hours before a federal judge temporarily blocked President Trump's plans to put more than 2,000 USAID employees on leave starting at midnight. Elon Musk just posting this, saying the office is now occupied by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And at the Department of Education, a much different scene.
And this man is blocking the door. He says he's a federal employee. He won't tell us who gave him permission to do this. All he knows is he's going to stand here and tell the members of Congress who are elected, who vote for the funding for all of them in this building, and for the student loans and for the Title I families, he's going to tell us that we can't come in.
That standoff there between Democratic lawmakers and a security guard as they were denied the lawmakers' entry into a federal building. The president says the Education Department is next, as he believes education should be more driven by the states. And he leveled this accusation against those protesting Democrats.
We're ranked dead last dead last. But the good news is we're number one in one category. You know what that is? Cost per pupil. We spend more per pupil than any other country in the world.
Our Libby Dean joining me now in studio with what happened today and why lawmakers were there. So they went to the Department of Education building, had that standoff there with the security guard. How did this start? Why did it start? How did it all end?
Like, it all started with a letter. 96 Democratic members of Congress sent a letter to the acting secretary of the Department of Education asking for this emergency meeting. That's what they wanted.
Okay.
They didn't get that. It didn't get set up, but they still showed up. You saw that video there of Maxine Waters really aggravated that they didn't get that meeting. And this is just really the latest example of Democrats kind of trying to find ground to stand on in Washington after the losses that we saw, of course, in November. And that ground now we're seeing throughout the week is actually the ground outside of these government agencies. So we saw USAID earlier this week, those protests, the protests outside of the Treasury Department. So the latest here being the Department of Education. Now, the president did react today during that press conference that he held with the Prime Minister of Japan. And what he was asked was basically, what's your reaction to this? And he said Maxine Waters, who we saw in that video there, called her a loser and said that basically these people are not people of the country. But those 96 members didn't get that meeting. Of course, we've got Linda McMahon's hearing her confirmation. She's going to be the...
And the president says she should lose her job because she should shut down the Department of Education.
Right, and that's exactly what these Congress members were protesting, was the Trump's plan to shut down the Department
How
of
long
Education.
did that meeting last there?
That meeting with
that showdown at the front of the Department of Education?
That clip looked like it was a good 2 minutes.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm sure it was a lot of back and forth there.
Libby Dean, live for us tonight. Libby, thank you. So the disagreements, by the way, don't end there, but they are also happening within the Republican Party. Congressional Republicans tonight still trying to figure out amongst themselves the best way forward to carry out President Trump's agenda, the big legislative items involving the border and taxes. Now, it's believed tonight that leadership will be working on Super Bowl Sunday even to try to put their game plan together. The Senate Majority Leader John Thune posting at one point today, quote, Senate Republicans are ready to roll. Our Joe Khalil live tonight on Capitol Hill with where they go from here. Hello, Joe.
Hey, so look, this is kind of fascinating. You've got House Republicans and Senate Republicans basically racing each other, Blake, to try to put their version of what President Trump's agenda looks like in their way and get it on the ground faster than the other guys. And it appears right now that the Senate might actually be winning in that. Senate Budget Chairman Lindsey Graham actually has a framework now, 2 different bills rather than one big, beautiful bill, which is what the House leadership wants. Graham says they're moving forward on it. Now, the House team, they did make some progress overnight, 5-6 hours last night at the White House, but they're still trying to figure out what exactly they're going to be putting in their version as well. The difference seems to be on the tax cuts. How exactly you manage that, and do you put taxes in one bill or separate it out, put it in 2? And take a look at what President Trump wants in his tax priorities. Like, this is not exactly going to be an easy lift, and you can imagine why now the House, with just 1 vote majority for Republicans virtually, is going to have a hard time getting everybody on board on the same page for all of these kinds of things. So tonight, President Trump inviting Senate Republicans for dinner. You can imagine they are going to be trying to sway him there. But next week, watch as both sides of the Capitol vie for attention and vie for their view on how to push President Trump's agenda forward.
Yeah, all this attention on Doge and who could potentially lose their job when and buyouts and all this. But still, Joe, on that side of the aisle for Republicans, they got to figure out how to come together and carry out the president's agenda. Our Joe K, live tonight in the Capitol hallways. Joe, thank you. All right, so a live look as well. The Caesars Superdome, New Orleans, Louisiana, site of the Super Bowl, which will kick off in about 48 hours from now. Now, while the eyes of the NFL will be on the big game, team owners might be trying to digest something else. The White House is now saying that one of the president's priorities in that upcoming tax bill will be to strip professional sports team owners of friendly tax breaks. The NFL commissioner as well this week stood up for his league's diversity initiatives. Roger Goodell asked how that fits with the president's push to scrap DEI at the federal level.
I believe that our diversity efforts have led to making the NFL better. It's attracted better talent. We think we're better when we get different perspectives.
And now the NCAA has adjusted its transgender policy in the wake of President Trump's executive order, which threatens revoking federal funds if transgender athletes are allowed in women's sports. Joining me now, Chris Stirewalt, host of the Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Hello, sir.
Brother man.
I touched upon a little of this in my note in the Hill's morning report.
Look at you.
You touched upon this in your newsletter, Whole Hog Politics. Brother, I hope you and I have a beer in one hand, some chicken wings in the other 48 hours from now.
Chicken wings are delicious. That's true.
But there was a little moment here in the intersection of sports and politics this week leading up to the big game.
Yeah, certainly when you see the NCAA doing what it's doing, that's a reflection of what presidential authority can do because they have Title IX.
Yep.
And these are schools that are bound by Title IX. And if that's what the rule says, that trans women cannot participate in women's sports, then that's true. So that's that's the NCAA bowing to the reality of the situation, just as they had to do it the previous way.
Right.
The NFL, president's not in charge of the NFL.
Roger Goodell is.
And if the president says that it's bad that they do DEI or say that they want to end racism, you can bully or you can yell or you can say that it's bad, but the president of the United States doesn't set policy for these teams.
It's fascinating, is it not, that he might be in this tax battle. All of a sudden, the White House this week rolled out what we had heard, right? No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security rate, all these things that we heard during the campaign. And then he said, and we're going to get rid of those sports team owners' tax breaks.
Well, what do you suppose this is? Don't you suppose that this is, you should start operating these sports leagues the way that I want you to, or this nice little tax break that you have here will go away, which is the Trump way of doing it.
Big story here in Washington today, among the many of them, is basically the president saying, go for it, Elon. We know you're doing USAID now. The Department of Education could be next. And he was asked today about the Pentagon, Chris, and the president basically blessed Doge going at the Pentagon. And I just wonder what happens when it gets to that point, what the reaction will be, because you're talking about a $900 billion or so budget.
Yeah, the Pentagon, the Department of Defense faces the world, but its impacts are mostly inside the United States, right? It spends its money with U.S. contractors. Its civilian and uniformed employees are mostly stationed here in the United States.
Right.
All of that stuff. When you go in and start messing around with that, you're messing around in the district. What the value of having it, if you're a member of Congress from North Carolina or Texas,
big military,
and you have a big military, if you have Fort Bragg or you have Fort Hood or something like that in or near your district, that's a huge part of who you are. People fight for military contracts for their district. They fight for bases to be located at their district. When you go in and start messing around with this stuff, if it has consequences there, USAID doesn't have very many friends in the United States, right? It's less than 1% of the federal budget, though Americans think it's a quarter of the federal budget.
Okay.
And the money is spent overseas, not here. It's very unpopular. When you come for USAID, it doesn't have very many friends in Washington, and it doesn't have much impact in the domestic economy. You start going after the Department of Education, you start going after the Department of Defense, that has real consequences in the districts of Republicans and Democrats.
See where it goes. As the president says, it ain't stopping anytime soon.
Here we go.
Chris Stirewalt, see you later in the show. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Still to come here on the Hill. He is a rising star in the Democratic Party, the Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, and he just faced a question over a case that he once oversaw involving the death of a 27-year-old teacher. Why the questions are coming out now, and they are coming, you know him, from our Brian Enton. Brian joins us live on the other side of the break, what he spoke to the governor about. I'm Blake Berman. Welcome to Washington. This is the center of politics. You're watching The Hill, and we're back in 4. Welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. So he's the head of the 5th most populous state. You will likely hear his name be talked about for a potential 2028 Democratic presidential run. The governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, also now answering his first question in years on the Greenberg case. 14 years ago, the 27-year-old Philadelphia teacher was found dead in her apartment. The cause initially labeled a homicide, but then changed to a suicide. Shapiro inherited the case when he was the Pennsylvania Attorney General, and in 2022, his office agreed with the suicide ruling. But now, the Philadelphia Medical Examiner believes that Greenberg's death is not a suicide.
I don't think I should speak for the city of Philadelphia and why they chose to make the decision they did. There's nothing I wanted more than to give these parents some finality, some answers, some clarity. And we received more evidence, more information during the course of our investigation that sadly didn't show what they wanted it to show.
The governor answering those questions as our Brian Entin was the one asking them in Pennsylvania just yesterday. Brian joins us live tonight. Brian?
Yeah, Blake, this is a crazy story. I can tell you, I've been looking into it for more than a year. All of the medical experts that I've talked to say there is no way that this was a suicide. This young woman, she was found stabbed 20 times, stabbed in the front, in the heart, all over her chest, stabbed in the back, stabbed in the spinal cord. The pathologists say you cannot keep stabbing yourself after you're stabbed that many times and stabbed in the spinal cord. It is just totally impossible. It's a bizarre situation. The medical examiner 14 years ago first ruled it a homicide, which seemed to make sense to a lot of people, but then in a very strange twist, a short time later, changed it to suicide, and then very recently, more than a decade later, said that it does not appear to be a suicide. And Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, has been brought into this whole mess because he was the attorney general. He reviewed the case, and he sided with the suicide ruling, which a lot of people have questioned because this young woman who died, Ellen Greenberg, her fiance, a man named Sam Goldberg, has family members, high-powered lawyers that have connections to the governor, and a lot of people are questioning whether that may have played a role into why he decided that it was a suicide.
And when you were asking the governor about this, he addressed the family's reaction, right? The Greenberg family reaction. What did he say?
Yeah, he did. And this has been very controversial in the last 24 hours. A lot of people are offended by this, including Ellen's family, both her parents. She was an only child, by the way. They don't feel like the governor has ever taken this case seriously. Let's listen to what he said.
Lashing out isn't going to change the evidence here. And I'm hopeful that as this process goes forward, if any new information comes to bear, that it immediately be shared with the Chester County District Attorney and allow the DA there to conduct an investigation.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens, Blake, now that the medical examiner has said that it's not a suicide. Will there be a new criminal investigation? And for Josh Shapiro politically, this is something that keeps coming up. When he wasn't chosen as Kamala Harris's vice president, a lot of people speculated that it had something to do with this case. I mean, even on X today, there's so many comments with people just upset with the way that he handled all of this.
Lashing out isn't going to change the evidence, the governor says, and says it to our Brian Entin, the one asking the questions, joining us tonight here on the Hill. Brian, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Blake.
All right, still much more ahead here on the Hill. Paper or plastic? How the president is now reopening the debate over straws and what he plans to do about it. Have you heard about the possible new executive order? Plus, the new DHS Secretary Kristi Noem at Guantanamo Bay this evening. What's she doing there? And what is one state doing, potentially, with bounty hunters? That's on the other side of the break when the Hill returns. The president pulls the plug on some EV chargers. It's back to plastic. And the vice president gets a pretty big assignment. Our Hannah Brandt is here with what's happening on the Hill and more. Hello, Hannah. Happy Friday, too, by the way.
Yes, happy Friday. Hey, Blake. So So today, President Trump put a roadblock on Biden's electric vehicle charging network. The Transportation Department says it's freezing funds for the grid of charging stations. So far, $3 billion of the $5 billion appropriated through Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law has been dished out to the states. Democrats argue it's unconstitutional for the executive branch to overturn actions approved by Congress. So essentially, a major court battle is in store. Another hot-button issue causing a stir today, plastic straws. President Trump announcing he'll sign an executive order next week ending bans and restrictions on plastic straws. This after President Biden directed the federal government to phase out all single-use plastics by 2035. The order could end up impacting plastic straw bans and restrictions in more than a dozen Democratic states across the country, like the ones here on this map. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance was reportedly tasked by Trump to hammer out a deal to sell TikTok to a U.S. entity. Vance will be working alongside National Security Advisor Michael Waltz to get that job done. Trump did pause enforcement of the TikTok ban until April, so the clock is ticking. And that's what's happening on the Hill.
So here's the thing with this one, Hannah. The president views himself as the deal maker, right? The art of the deal.
Sure.
If they were close to a deal, do you think he would just hand it off to J.D. Vance?
I don't know. And historically,
he wouldn't. He wouldn't just hand it off to the vice president, right?
Yes, and we know presidents give the tough tasks.
Tough assignments
to their VPs.
Right, they go elsewhere, and they're working within a very tight time frame here. But I don't know.
Yes.
The fact that this is being handed off, I think maybe says they could be further away from some sort of progress than closer to it.
And a lot of people are going to care a lot about this.
Oh my gosh, half the country, give or take, has it on this thing right here.
Exactly.
All right, Hannah Brandt, have a great weekend. Good luck to your Chiefs, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, meantime, now in Illinois, that state is responding. Its governor, the Democrat, J.B. Pritzker, says he believes the Department of Justice lawsuit against his state, Cook County, and Chicago for its sanctuary city policies are, as he puts it, garbage.
I think it's a massive effort to distract from what they are doing across the country. The lawsuits are against laws on the books in Illinois. I mean, unlike Donald Trump, we follow the law.
The DOJ sued Thursday as the Trump administration continues to carry out deportations, including raids against illegal immigrants.
The sanctuary officials say, well, we want victims and witnesses of immigration crime to be free to come to the police without fear of us working with ICE. That is such crap. So, we're going to hold sanctuary cities accountable. We're going to take them on it, and we'll take them to court.
Two sides to this one. Our Alex Capriello in the middle of it all there tonight in the Windy City with the response from that state. Alex?
Yeah, hey there, Blake. So essentially this DOJ lawsuit didn't just come down to J.B. Pritzker, but also the mayor here of Chicago, the Cook County president, also CPD Superintendent Larry Snelling. But based on everything that we are hearing, they are all vowing to continue fighting back, backing those sanctuary city and state policies that are putting them under the microscope from the federal government in the first place, and despite what they're hearing directly from some of the law enforcement in their state. For example, let's take a look at Winnebago County Sheriff, who I spoke to exclusively. He's one of the most outspoken critics of the Illinois Trust Act, which essentially prohibits his deputies from working directly with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. He says that he just wants to see some sort of reform, some amendments made to the law. He understands the position that the sanctuary cities and states are taking, but also feels like there's a lot more that his deputies could be doing to help President Trump and his quest for immigration reform. Take a listen to the sheriff.
Yeah, I really do feel that it's not allowing us to do our job as we need to. By no means we're going to go out and, like, cowboys and round people up, because I hear that too. It's like, absolutely not. We're going to stay within those realms, but I still worry about the public safety and being able to say something.
And Blake, earlier this morning, I had a chance to speak directly to Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, telling him what the Winnebago County Sheriff just told me about how he believes the Illinois Trust Act is hurting his deputies and the people of his community. Here's how the governor responded to me.
I understand that law enforcement, like a sheriff in Winnebago County, is politically opposed to keeping people safer because he thinks that's good politics in his area. But I can tell you that we've already seen the Safety Act working. It's been in effect for a year and a half now.
And again, I want to emphasize the sheriff tells me this is not politics, it's not partisan, it's public safety. He feels as if his community is at a greater risk when undocumented immigrants, particularly those that are accused or convicted of violent crimes, are within his community. And so he wants to see them make amendments to that Illinois Trust Act so his deputies could do more, help out ICE agents in Illinois.
Our Alex Capriello, live tonight in Chicago. Alex, thank you. So the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is on the move tonight in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, overseeing the transfer of illegal immigrants to that facility. The secretary posting some of these photos right here showing more flights carrying migrants arriving there today. Now, DHS says it plans to house potentially 30,000 at that facility at Gitmo. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement continues its immigration crackdown across the country today. Meantime, lawmakers in Mississippi grappled with this question. Should bounties be paid to help with deportations? Lawmakers shot down a proposal which would offer to pay people $1,000 for every undocumented immigrant reported and identified. Another bill is now in the works. Joining me now is Matthew Barton. He's the district attorney for DeSoto County, who supported that bill, live with us tonight here on the Hill. Matthew, thanks for being with us. Explain to me here right off the top what exactly you're trying to do there.
Yeah, so we're just trying to assist at the local and state level with the Trump administration's priority for deporting criminals who happen to be here illegally. And so ICE only has so many people. So more is more and more is better. And if we can put people on the ground at a local level to help out and assist them, we should do that. And so I think the bill that I suggested at least sparked a conversation that is ongoing in Jackson, Mississippi, and hopefully will lead to us assisting the federal government in doing something historic.
You say assisting the federal government, but if the federal government thought this would be successful, they would try to do it too, right? But they're not.
Yeah, so, we're really trying to piggyback off of Donald Trump's priorities. He ran on this in 2016 successfully. He went back to well in 2024 and essentially put illegal immigration on the ballot. And so the popular vote made it very clear that the sentiment in the United States is that we need to deal with this issue. And so we're trying to do it at a local level here in Hernando, Mississippi.
Here's what the president of the Mississippi Bail Agents Association, Mike Morrison, said. He said, quote, "We were not consulted." He went on to say, "We have not endorsed this. We, like you, saw this in the news and said, oh, God." If you can't get the help of the bail agents there, how would you even carry this out?
Yeah, so obviously this ideal is not for everybody. I think the simple fact of the matter is there is an ongoing issue. In my local jail, we've had over 1,000 illegal aliens come through our system in the last 4 years, which is more than double the 4 years before that. And so maybe he's not quite as worried about the effect of these violent, hardened criminals in his community, but as the district attorney, I am. And so we're doing everything we can to combat that and deport as many as we can.
Your office just sent out a press release. The DeSoto County District Attorney's Office has announced that it's coordinating with ICE to have a certain criminal illegal alien swiftly deported out of the U.S. You say he was someone who was accused of child pornography, and you want him going to Guantanamo Bay. Explain why you want him going to Guantanamo Bay, and how many others are in your prisons that you plan to coordinate with ICE as well.
So in our local jail, we have successfully deported 8 people or turned them over to ICE last week. We're working on this individual, Adolfo Santana, who is charged with child porn. He's particularly a public safety issue, in my opinion. Anyone that would commit crimes of this heinous nature against children deserves to be in a place where they don't have an opportunity to reoffend. I think someone that would do something this egregious would be perfect for a place like Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, so, I mean, you've heard some of the criticisms, Matthew, from some on the left of sending illegal immigrants deported to Guantanamo Bay. You specifically want this person going there. Why there?
Because I believe that someone like him deserves to be in a maximum security facility. He needs to be cut from the herd. People like this commit especially egregious crimes. They need to be treated a little bit differently. And so I think that cutting him off from his support system and putting him in a place like Guantanamo Bay, where he may not have access to the same amount of visitors and luxuries, would be a good thing. Maybe learn him a little lesson.
All right, we'll leave it there. Matthew Barton is the DA there in DeSoto County, live with us tonight here on The Hill. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the time.
Yes, sir.
All right, live look right now, just down the road from us here in Washington, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The president wrapping up 3 weeks in office. He's actually in Florida tonight at this moment as he's about to meet with Republican senators, and he has done something that no other president has come close to in modern history. I'll explain when we return. And a live look from New Orleans, just 2 days away from the big game. The president will be the first to do something else this weekend as well. Full panel on the other side.
Leland Vittert is bringing On Balance to prime time.
We welcome you to the Farish Network on television.
New time, same Leland.
And we never back down from the truth.
On Balance, coming to prime time Monday at a new time, 9 Eastern on NewsNation.
We thought we would go quiet into the weekend with no news from here on out. Think again. The President of the United States just posting on his platform, Truth Social, that he is revoking Joe Biden's security clearance. Quote, "There is no need for Joe Biden to continue receiving access to classified information. Therefore, we are immediately revoking Joe Biden's security clearance and stopping his intelligence briefings." He set this precedent, the president says, back in 2021. When he instructed the intelligence community to stop me from accessing details on national security, a courtesy provided to former presidents. Full panel here with me now. Niall Stanage is the White House reporter for The Hill. Michael Stanage, congressional reporter for The Hill as well. Chris Direwalt, host of The Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, and Julia Manchester, national political reporter for The Hill. Hello to y'all. Happy Friday, and the back and forth continues here, Michael.
Yeah, that's right. We know that we have been seeing this tit for tat between former President Biden, current President Trump. This had been going on for a while since Trump entered the White House, then Biden came into the White House. Clearly, there is an afterlife to this rivalry, with President Trump announcing this evening that he is going to revoke security clearances for President Biden. You noted the precedent for this and the background for this was that back in 2021, President Biden had blocked Trump from receiving security briefings. So a bit of a difference right there, but nonetheless, the rivalry very clearly continues.
What's the message he's trying to send here?
I think the message is he enjoys sticking a finger in Joe Biden's eye and is going to continue to do so. That's basically the message. As is often the case with Trump, you can make abstract arguments about should former presidents really get security briefings. Is it really that important? But I don't think Trump's overly concerned about the abstractions. He wants to punch Biden one more time.
This continues, Julia, with one of the themes of the day, which is the President of the United States, now 3 weeks into re-election here, going after anything and everything at this point in time.
Yeah, I hate to use this phrase because it's become such a cliche, but he is literally flooding the zone. I mean, earlier today, we've been talking about DOJ, we've been talking about USAID, we've been talking about Trump saying he wants to take over Gaza. You know, it's interesting, talking to Democrats, they say, look, you see Trump doing all these things, drawing our attention in a number of different ways, and they say it's a distraction. It's a distraction to, turn our attention maybe from DOJ or cutting the federal workforce, for example. There is just such an overload of information, and it's all kinds of information. It's not just policy, but it's also Donald Trump continuing to stick a finger in Joe Biden's eye.
To Niall's point, do these presidents need these classified briefings? I guess that's one thing, and then revoking a security clearance is another.
So because of the dereliction of Congress and a variety, and the human desire to be ruled, we have created this imperial presidency with all of the trappings around it that include the former president's club and all of this stuff. Donald Trump is trying to create the most powerful executive branch, but certainly since Woodrow Wilson. He has a vision of this massive authority that will be vested in the president, in the executive branch. But at the same time, he's going after the unwritten constitution, these things that create the power and prestige around the office of the presidency, and he is pushing the limits in every way that he can.
All right. Meantime, live look at the White House, where the president is closing out his third full week as commander-in-chief. Consider this for a moment, to the point. The president has enacted at least 59 executive orders. That is more than any president has signed in their first 100 days in office since FDR signed 93 in 100 days. Keep in mind, we're 17 days in or something like that. Harry Truman, 57 executive orders in his first 100 days. No president has come close to that since. His actions just this week alone include sanctions on the International Criminal Court, eliminating anti-Christian bias, banning biological men from women's sports, withdrawing the United Nations from the Human Rights Council, pausing tariffs on Mexico and Canada for another few weeks, plans to create a sovereign wealth fund, and 10% tariffs on goods imported from China.
Well, and I think he was supposed to sign an executive order banning paper straws.
That's
I think
next,
that was something.
That's next week. They're still coming.
Exactly. Right. It's still coming. Look, I mean, to Chris's point with this, the power of the executive branch, I mean, we're only seeing it grow. I remember, watching the Obama administration as well as Trump and, the Biden administration. There's always been this criticism, I think, of presidents from the opposing party for signing all of these executive orders. But this is Donald Trump. The Trump team would say this is promises made, promises kept.
So they would say promises made, promises kept. But isn't the other side of the story this building behind me here, and Republicans meeting this week trying to figure out how to actually hammer out his agenda legislatively, Michael?
Yeah, they can't exactly figure it out. And now we're seeing this race between the House and the Senate, an intra-chamber competition that we've seen in the past. The House Republicans have really struggled to coalesce around a blueprint for this Trump agenda bill. They're still trying at it, but so far that answer has eluded them. Now, Senate Republicans are getting antsy. They're sick of waiting for their House
John
colleagues.
Thune said, we're ready to go.
That's right. And Senator Lindsey Graham is planning to mark up a resolution for this Trump agenda bill next week. And significantly, a number of Senate Republicans are headed to Mar-a-Lago this evening to meet with President Trump. They're going to have his ear. They're likely going to lobby him for their contrasting strategy on how to pass his agenda. So it's going to be fascinating to see where Trump stands after this meeting, if he's still siding with the House or if he's going to give it to the Senate.
And it's a Republican-on-Republican dynamic here, Niall.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing that, to Michael's point, it's about the rivalry between the two chambers rather than actual political party control. And so we see this attempt to persuade or to get Trump on the side of the Senate to wean him off the House idea. Right. I mean, these are things that are, of course, into the minutiae of Congress, but I do think they go to the tug of war that often exists between the two chambers in the building behind us.
Michael Whatley, Chris, the chairman of the RNC, basically said to me when I asked him about what happens if Republicans can't unite because there's going to be some struggle. And he said there would be, quote unquote, ramifications. And that is part of the backdrop here as they try to figure all this out.
Well, they won't unite in the sense that there are genuine differences that have to be worked out. If you subscribe to the idea that Donald Trump is doing something important, which is having these fights and doing the rough and tough and ugly stuff, if you think that's true between the parties, it will also be true within the party, which is that there are people who genuinely disagree on the idea of Donald Trump has many legacies from his first term, but one of them is that while the country was growing at 4% annualized GDP rate, we also ran $1 trillion deficit, and there are genuinely Republicans who sincerely believe that that is the wrong thing to do.
All right, speaking of the president, live look right now at the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans. Did you know that for the first time ever, we've been doing this Super Bowl thing for 59 straight years in this country. It is the first time ever that the President of the United States will attend in person. President Trump planning to attend the game on Sunday. But before you watch it Sunday night, you got to watch the best Sunday show in the business Sunday morning.
You should.
How about that?
It's so good.
Who you got on this weekend?
We have on, it looks like Kevin Hern, congressman from Oklahoma. Governor Matt Meyer from Delaware. It's little, but it's important.
It's Kelly Meyer's cousin.
Is that Kelly Meyer's
cousin? No, I'm joking.
Okay. Well, I would believe that they're a can-do kind of family and are, and I say this with love, best in the business panel of journalists.
All right. We'll see you Sunday morning. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Still to come. On the other side of the break, there is a company in this country that has grown faster at least on the stock market, the single best stock in this country, Palantir. What's happened to that company over the last year and how it relates to China? What they're warning about China. I'm going to explain on the other side of the break. Stay with us. Leland Vitter with me.
For years, the MDA community has pushed the science,
shifted the narrative,
and established the field of neuromuscular medicine.
And until that day when this is all a thing of the past,
you couldn't stop us if you tried.
Join us and celebrate 75 years of breakthroughs at MDA75.org.
All right, so before we say goodbye, here is a chart and a call that caught my eye. This right here is the stock chart for the company Palantir. Why am I telling you about it? Because it is the single best performing stock in the United States from 2024 up until now. It does a lot of work with the government, and it gave a big warning this week. Palantir, by the way, up 340% last year alone, and so far this year, it's up another 45%. The market cap just shy of $260 billion, to put that in perspective. It's basically the same worth right now as Wells Fargo, Chevron, and Coca-Cola. Now, Palantir has been helping some of the most sensitive and critical parts of the United States government, including many parts of our military with AI and its database.